Hello everyone, my name is Keelan O'Connor. I'm going to be doing an evaluation of a slave narrative. The slave narrative I chose to do my evaluation on is Memories of Childhood Slavery Days by Annie Burton. So Annie's narrative was written by her herself and was later published by Ross Publishing Company in Boston in around 1909. A brief summary of her narrative is it is broken into 4 different sections, and each talking about something a little bit different. It starts out with recollections of happy life, going on to reminiscence, vision, and race question. Again, each talking about a little different part of her life. The beginning talking about her early childhood days and good memories, on to reminiscence, which goes on from her early childhood days up until her adult years, and then into vision, talking about her businesses and moving across the country and all her different moves, into race question, which is just her ending and kind of just bringing up the idea of slavery and all of that. So then I have my thesis, which I will be evaluating the views of a woman's point of view as a slave, capitalism as a former slave, and lastly, her education. My first major point, women's views as a slave. As we read in class before, Frederick Douglass was a male slave, and Annie Burton here is a female. While reading the 2 different narratives, you can see a very distinct difference, as they both worked in different areas, as mainly females tend to work more in the house and cooking, cleaning, all mainly inside, while Frederick's was all mainly seen outside, working in the fields or any kind of labor. Hers was mainly inside, working with the families. Also, while reading, you can notice that her point of view and focus was on her good memories as a child and as a slave, rather than the bad memories. When we read Frederick's, he brings up many different times of whippings and punishments, while in Annie's evaluation, her narrative, you see that she actually does not talk about any punishments. She brings it up, but doesn't ever go into major details in it. She brings it up very, very rarely. My next major point is capitalism as a former slave. Many slaves after the emancipation and postbellum went and started businesses and were interested in capitalism, as Annie was no different. She would negotiate different pays with the owners everywhere she went to work. It was always, every time she went somewhere new, she'd get a new pay, and she would always negotiate with all the different types of experiences and just use that to help her and better herself financially. She later became a restaurant owner. She would find places for her workers to live that weren't expensive, as well as furniture, keeping it at friends' houses, anything, and then eventually opening her business, where she found a demand, where she, while she was working in the North, found a recipe that became very popular in her restaurant and was a very high demand. She used this demand to better herself in her business and really helped her financially and made the restaurant a big success. As she did do a lot of moving, the restaurant soon did close, but she said she did many other businesses but didn't go into as much detail as she did with her restaurant. My third major point is her education. She started her education as a young child in Sunday school. Her master would take her to Sunday school for church and classes. This is where she initially learned her reading and writing. While she was growing up, after getting moved to a different master, she did not go to Sunday school or continue her education, but later in her adult years, she brings up her night classes at the Franklin School. She really loved her education. She loved her professor, Miss Emerson, as well as her principal, Mr. Gould. He and Miss Emerson had a project for her to write this narrative. Actually, it began as just a class assignment to get to know the students and learn and just kind of think about their history. After she turned it in, they both approached her and encouraged her to expand on it and later make it into a book. Sadly, one did die and moved away, so she was unable to get the help from them that they said they would be able to do. But she was often praised as for being an exemplary student, always on time, and always being there, and always giving her full attention, and was often quite praised. All of this began her time into writing as she wrote many different things, many different historical pieces, poems, etc. And that's all seen at the bottom of her narrative that she ended up publishing and making into a book. My final remarks. In conclusion, you see the importance of the history of women slaves, as there was only a handful of narratives actually written by women. So it's very important that she did publish this book, as it gave the idea and the overall experience of what life was like as a woman slave, not only getting the idea of a man's. One piece I would have told her to add in is one time of punishment in her life. That would have given the better times a more brighter and better perspective. But she may not have had any horrible punishments, or just was too painful for her to talk about, so may have been a reason why she had left it out. Finally, Burton's story, much like Douglas's, is very important to our history, as we do learn about this in textbooks, but we don't get the idea as much as we would reading these narratives. You don't get the feeling, the memories, or the experiences as you would when you read these stories. So, in conclusion, that was my evaluation of Annie Burton's slave narrative, focusing on her education, capitalism as a former slave, and viewpoint as a female slave. Thank you for listening.